Good morning, everybody. And welcome to the library. Congratulations on attending one of our in-person programs, which we just restarted in September. People seem to like actually coming to the building again. And we're glad to see you all here. I'm Michael Bellicosa, Community Engagement Manager at the library, which means that I get to organize all the adult programs. And I get to work with a lot of great collaborators and partners in the community, including the two co-sponsors of today's program, which is Wilton Youth Council and also SpedNet Wilton. So with that, I'm going to get out of the way, turn it over to my friend Carrie Ann, who's going to introduce the speaker and the program. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming this morning. I was really excited to come back to the library and have us be able to do this live today. So yay, welcome back. My name is Carrie Ann Finelli. I am the co-chair of Parent Education for Wilton Youth Council, and I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you to Wilton Library and SpedNet Wilton for your partnership in today's event. We have two upcoming presentations I wanted to let you guys know about. On Friday, October 29th, from 12 to 1, we have a webinar that's called It Happens Here, What to Know and How to Help Children Experiencing Domestic Violence. In this webinar, participants will learn the risks of children's exposure to domestic violence and how caring adults can support resiliency, how to identify children who are experiencing violence at home, and how to help and where to find resources. On Tuesday, November 9th, we have an event called Drinking, Smoking, Vaping, Trends in Teen Use and What Parents Can Do. This is going to be 10 to 11:30 a.m. here at the Wilton Library live, or 7 to 8 p.m. on our Wilton Youth Council Zoom. And our presenter is going to be Liz Jorgensen. She'll be talking about what is quote unquote normal when it comes to adolescent experimentation with alcohol, vaping, and other risky behaviors. She'll also be speaking about this point, which is interesting. Affluence is a risk factor for exposure to substance use and abuse, and many high-achieving teens are secretly engaging in these behaviors. She will also speak to the unique risk factors and considerations for prevention of substance use for teens that have learning disabilities and other special needs. A couple of reminders, please sign up for our newsletters. You can find information at the back for that. Please visit our websites, wiltonyouth.org and spednetwilton.org, and please look us up on Facebook. Before you leave, if you can use your QR code that you were handed on the way in and fill out our evaluation. We really do take these seriously and we like to hear your feedback. So if you could do that, we'd love it. We want to remind you that Wilton Youth Council programs are for informational purposes only, do not constitute medical advice, and are not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am very happy to announce Dr. Susan Bauerfeld, and I'll give you a little information about her. Susan Bauerfeld, PhD, is a licensed clinical psychologist, speaker, parenting consultant, coach, and ADHD coach. Her passion is promoting anxiety and teaching skills for success, especially skills of self-regulation, anxiety management, effective communication, and self-advocacy. She strives to offer the knowledge, support, and skills individuals need to strengthen their most powerful tool, a safe, secure, nurturing relationship with themselves and their loved ones. Whether in lecture halls, workshops, or private practice, Dr. Bauerfeld offers compassion, humor, and education as she helps people develop the skills they need to more effectively manage their worries, challenges, and technology. She has a private practice in Norwalk, and her card is located at the back if anyone wants to grab one. Welcome, Susan.
You have no idea how happy I am to speak to people. I really hate doing a webinar. It's like speaking to a wall. So thank you all for being here. So as I said, as Carrie Ann said, my card's in the back if anyone needs it. I'm a little out of practice, so I forgot any other materials, but feel free to reach out. I'm susanbauerfeld.com and I'm susan@susanbauerfeld.com. So that should be easy to remember if you need to reach me. Okay, so I usually like to walk around, but because there's a recording for various purposes, I'm going to be stuck here. So, so today we're talking about. Michael, can you? I have it on. I'll use this for now. Spacebar. What button do I use on here to get it?
You
to
can.
everything?
You can.
Oh, there. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. There.
Got it.
Okay, so. we're in that one. All right, sorry about that. I tested it and it just between when I tested it and now it's not working. So all of you are here presumably because you have kids getting ready or deep into this college process. How many of you are deep in right now? Okay, and how many of you just on the road to thinking about it? Okay, so we got about 50-50, right? So, you know, it seems like a huge big deal, and in many levels it is. But what we're going to talk about is how to make it less of a big deal, how to manage it so it doesn't overwhelm. Because often that's what people get stuck in, being very overwhelmed by this thing that seems like the moment that's going to define your child. So inherent in this process, lots of uncertainty and discomfort. Okay, how are we going to pay for it? Okay. Where do we go? Do we wait? What are the schools doing about COVID? What's going on with testing? You know, should I have my kid take the SAT or not? Should they apply to a school with that or not? So lots and lots of questions. They are a very natural part of this whole process. So the fact that you're experiencing these questions and the uncertainty and the discomfort that comes with it, very, very normal. The other thing that happens is we all have our own parts inside. Some of them saying, I just want them to be a kid. And other ones saying, you got to get them to buckle down. They've got to do this. They got to do that. Okay. Some parts saying, you know, I just want them to do whatever they want. And others, nope, they got to go to school. They got to go to college. So within ourselves, we can have these different parts that have different needs, different ideas about how to do this. And then within our own family unit, outside of ourselves, we have that too. The kids may want one thing. You may want another. Okay, so there's all of this push and pull going on around this process. The kids wanting to just go out and have fun, you wanting them to hit the books, okay? So a lot of this conflict going on. So these tugs of war constantly going on. Okay, I want them to get into the best possible school they can, but those cost lots and lots of money that we might not have, right? I really need to work, so we make that money, but I could really use a vacation, okay? My head says this is the way to go. My heart is telling me something else. And these conflicts can be going on with your own kids too. These are both conflicts for you and conflicts for your kids. Okay, the kids can say, I really should be at the books, but what I really want to do is be out with my friends. So all of these conflicting needs, these are a natural, normal part of everyday life and this process. There's nothing wrong with you if you're experiencing these kinds of conflicts. There's nothing wrong with your kids if they're experiencing these conflicts. Yet worry, which we're going to talk a lot about today, worry will tell you something else. Worry will tell you that all of this is dangerous and you have to get rid of it. And when worry does that, it makes it really hard to manage it. So what this talk is really about is how do we manage these waves of uncertainty and discomfort that are a natural part of this process of raising a kid, of helping them be as successful as they can be, and being a parent in an affluent community. Okay, so one of my favorite quotes here is John Kabat-Zinn, who says, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." So today I'm going to be talking to you mostly about how to surf, how to cope. What is it that you can do for yourselves to cope? And also, how can you help and support your child's coping with the stress of this process? But again, worry will come in and say, uh-oh, this is dangerous. Shouldn't be having these conflicts, shouldn't be feeling uncomfortable. Gotta stop it, gotta stop it. Worry really makes it hard to surf. You know, the best tools for supporting your team through this process and in general, okay, is managing your worry and your relationship, staying calm and connected. To foster that relationship, you really need to manage your worry, because worry not only gets in the way of surfing, but it also can interfere with the kind of relationship you need to support your team. Okay, and then also teaching them how to do the same. Teaching how is really important. So often, I raised 3 boys in Wilton, and so often what I found myself doing was demanding that they be there already instead of teaching them how to get there. And being in the mess with them, teaching them how to get there is really where it's at for parenting. Okay? They get themselves there. You have no control. You have some influence over that, but you have no control. You can't make them do anything. Okay, even a toddler, you can't make them eat. Have you ever tried to make a baby or a toddler eat? You can't do it. Okay? The only reason they eat babies is because they have an instinct for survival to eat, right? You can't make them do it. But your relationship, your calmness, your protection, your nurturing can influence how well they eat and what they eat, but you can't make them do anything. So teaching them how is really important. And your relationship is a really big part of that. It's the source of that influence. Again, you have no control. All you have is influence, and it comes through your relationship. Okay, for your kids, your relationship gives them what they need most. And what they need most is reassurance that they're okay, even though this is hard, even though they might not be doing as well as so-and-so, even though they fell down. Okay. Shelter, you know, the obvious, protection, security, so that they're relatively safe as they can be, and coaching and instruction. I really like the idea of thinking of yourself as a coach rather than as this person who's making sure and creating some product at the end. You're coaching them to find out who they are and how to do what they want to do. Okay, and your relationship, I love this program you guys have coming out about the domestic violence. I think it's a really important topic. And domestic violence can take many, many forms. It's not just hitting. But relationships can really inoculate kids against the harmful impact of that. Even a family where there is one family member who is violent, if there's a secure relationship with another adult in the family, there is far less risk for that child than if they don't have that. Okay, it is extremely powerful, your relationship, in terms of really inoculating kids. It doesn't, just like our COVID vaccines, they do not prevent us from, you know, getting it or whatever, but we don't get it as bad. The harmful effects are not as bad. Same thing with this relationship. Okay, so this relationship really is like an inoculation, critically important. And if you come away with nothing else from this talk, if you can shift your focus to your relationship with your kid instead of, I got to get them into a good school, I'll feel like I've done my job. Okay. Okay, so your connection really helps them cope. Okay, when those hands are there, when you are there to help them, okay, they can surf better. They can cope better. Okay, but worry gets in the way. Okay, if this is what you're doing, okay, then they do that. And now the coping becomes really difficult. So I'm going to take a little side trip here to the brain so that you understand why this is so important. We're going to talk about two areas of the brain. This is the brain super simplified. Okay, Dan Siegel uses a fist model of the brain. Emotional brain, so that's that part down below in the circle, and then thinking brain. That's the top part there. Okay, so when you're coping, you're like this. When your worry's in charge, you're like this. Dan Siegel calls this a flip lid. Okay? When you flip your lid, you don't have access to what you need to cope. So this part down here, this limbic system, this emotional brain, okay, this is naturally drawn automatically. You don't have to do anything to make it do this. It will naturally draw your attention to anything novel, anything threatening. This is for survival, okay? So anything that's a little different, it's like, pay attention to that. And you're determining, is that something that will help me survive, or is that something that will threaten me and I need to get away from it? It's a really, really useful thing that our brain does for us automatically without us having to think about it. Fully online, really early in development, okay? Not something that you need to really work on. It's kind of there when you come out. But when this part of the brain is in charge, you get very reactive and impulsive. You're not thinking, you're just, the magnet's over there to that thing. It's like the squirrel moment and you're captured by it. Okay? The prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain, this thinking brain, okay, not fully online till the age of 25 to 30 in a typical brain. Okay, in children, even the ages you have, it's in the process of developing, not fully there. But this part of the brain can use effort to take attention away from those threats or that alarm that the limbic system raises to things like initiating, sustaining, planning, organizing, inhibiting, stopping an impulse, decision-making, all the things you want your kids to be doing for college, right? They need this part of the brain. They need to be surfing in order to do these things you're demanding that they do, like make a list, like tell me where you want to go because the trip is coming up and we have to plan which schools we're going to visit, okay? So requires this part of the brain. But if worry's in charge, don't have access to that part of the brain. So the surfing skills the kids need for success in college are the ones you can be nurturing now through the process to help them be successful when they get there. Again, we can't just demand that they have this. We have to teach them how to do all these things. Okay, be autonomous. Okay, this is what they really need. I believe this is loosely from the work of, what's the dean's name we heard speak in New York? Yes, Julie Lithcote-Hames, who wrote Raising an Adult. And she talks about how what kids need to be successful in college are these factors, autonomy and resilience. They need to be able to independently seek out information. They need to be able to manage their time. They need to be independent decision makers, and they need to know how to take care of themselves. Okay, these are things that if you're actively helping them learn how to do these now, that's part of getting them ready for college, because this is what they're going to need. Resilience, being able to manage their expectations, okay? One of my favorite quotes, I don't have a slide in this presentation, but is when you fight reality, you suffer. This is Byron Katie. So if what is that your student is kind of naturally in the B range, there's nothing wrong with that. Even a C. C is average. Average in my mind means like most of us. If we go with the normal curve, okay, You guys familiar with the normal curve, right? 68% is most of us in the middle. Yet what we're demanding in communities like Wilton is that every kid gets squeezed over here into the top 1 or 10%. It's impossible. It just doesn't work that way. Statistics don't work that way. Yet that's what we're demanded. So if you can manage your own expectations and keep them in line with what is, and help your children do the same, and not just go with the worry threat response of, oh, if they're not here, then, you know, they're doomed. Not true. Not true. Most of us are not doomed. Okay? And the other part of resilience is to seek help when they need it, to identify, oh, I'm struggling a little bit. Where can I go to get some help? So all of these are the surfing skills that you guys need and that are really important to model and teach to the kids. So we're going to go with a situation, and I'm going to show you what happens in the brain depending how this situation is looked at and handled. Okay, so, you know, this is what it's like for the kids, all these questions, right? Did you do this? Did you do that? Okay, which college you want to go to? You know, what do you want to study? What do you want to be when you grow up? Okay, and most of them feel really buried by them. Some of them hold up a little better under the weight of all this, but most of them are feeling it. Okay, and what this comes with naturally is a lot of uncertainty and discomfort. So in the coping brain, the situation gets your attention, okay? They're kind of overwhelmed. Okay, even within the child, they can get the attention to, I'm kind of overwhelmed. But what happens in the coping brain is the attention shifts over to, oh, okay, how am I going to cope with this? What am I going to do about it? Okay, and a parent might say, you know, I noticed that Sam, I tried to use a gender neutral name, okay, that Sam is really overwhelmed. Okay, I wonder what will help right now. Okay, what strategies can I use to help with this? This is what happens in the coping brain. But in the worried brain, what happens is that rapidly the attention goes from the situation to worried thinking about the situation. What if Sam never gets it together? Okay, what if this continues and, you know, Sam is living under a bridge someday? Okay? You know, I need to make Sam do X. And then the situation, the magnet of attention goes to the alarm, because that kind of thinking raises the alarm. And now you're in fight, flight, freeze. There are many things that are problematic about fight, flight, freeze, especially for something like the college process. A, most fundamentally, it will not help you. B, it's designed for a completely different situation. Fight, flight, freeze is designed for a true imminent life-threatening emergency. Okay, if I took a poll of this room, I would guess that at most, maybe you guys have experienced 1 or 2 of those in your entire life. Okay, I'm 62 years old. I've had one of these. Okay, a true life-threatening emergency in 62 years. But think about how often you're going into freak-out mode like this. Okay, and that's going to vary in the room too, how many of you are, but we live more and more in a society where this is how people deal with things. They go, ah, okay, got to get rid of it. Not helpful. Okay, because none of this is life-threatening for the college process. Now, if you have a really skilled worry brain, it's arguing with you right now. It's arguing with me or wants to argue with me right now. Well, if they don't get into a good school and then they don't get a good job, well, then that kind of could be life-threatening. But what this fight or flight is for the imminent, immediate life-threatening emergency. And it kicks in if you need it, and it kicks in, it's really helpful because you either run away, you fight it off, or you just hunker down and wait till it's over. But again, only useful, only effective for the true life-threatening emergency, not anything to do with the college process. So surfing step number 1, And I already kind of did this with you, and I forgot I was going to ask you to assess where you were. So I'll try it in retrospect, but it might not work so well. So when you first saw that slide with all those questions about all those things, you know, well, what is the school going to do? Do we wait? Do we go? How do we decide all these things? You know, how high was your anxiety? Was it going up as you were thinking about that? Okay. And then when I talked about how normal it was to feel that, did any of you have a lowering of that anxiety? A little bit. Hopefully I see a couple heads. That's the point of this step one. If you notice what's going on, you name it and you normalize it, it's a really good step toward getting that lid back off. So for our guy Sam or our girl Sam there, there's a lot of information coming at you right now. It's reasonable that you're feeling overwhelmed. So to really acknowledge what's going on rather than demand that they stop or that they do something to make it go away. That's surfing step one. And by the way, this surfing step one is also anxiety management step one, regulation step one. It's all the same thing. Okay, surfing step two, turn that alarm off. Okay. When the focus is on the threats that exist in the college process, you're going to be flipped all the time. Your kid's going to be flipped all the time. And trust me, if they're in a school like Wilton High School, the culture there is threat focused. You got to do this or somebody else is going to get your spot. Okay. Or you with parents, don't tell anybody where your kid's applying because, you know, you don't want that person to get the idea that they've got to take that spot. Okay, that kind of threat focus is going to keep flipping the lid. So instead, you want to really focus on, okay, how are we going to manage what's in front of us and get that alarm off? Step three, really important, and none of us, myself included, do enough of this, is to create some space and time. So if you or your kid is like spiraling into that roundy guy going like this, okay, step back. Give yourself a time out, okay, or a time in if you want to call it. Time to go inward and really reset. So if you've got a kid, and this happens to a lot of kids in high school, they're sitting there with the books and they're like, I just can't do it. The teacher is so stupid and this assignment is so stupid. And why do I have to study this? I'm never going to use this in the rest of my life. And why do I have to do this? And why are you making me do this? And, you know, I'm just going to quit. Okay. Anybody experienced anything like that? And what do you usually try to do? You try to reason with them, right? If you're in a good space, you start out in a good space and you try really being logical with them. And trying to be really calm and supportive, but they keep going. And then you lose it too, because you've tried so hard to be calm and regulated and they're losing it. Okay? What you really need there is some time and space. Some time and space for you to do what you need to regulate and some time and space for them to do what they need to regulate. So to be able to say something like, why don't you step away? Step away and go outside and throw the basketball for a bit. But you don't want to just say that because a lot of you have probably tried that, right? And they still come back and they're at it again. But the purpose of stepping away is to get regulated. So go throw the baseball away and get yourself back in charge, okay? Kick the worry guy out of being in charge, get yourself back in charge. And we all need time and space for this, but we're all, you know, so pressured with time that we often don't take enough time and space and we don't allow enough for it. It's really important to allow time for this because without it, you're all flipped and then the pressure mounts because you're not doing what you need this part of the brain to do. And then surfing step 4 is return back to focusing. And what I like to say here is take a manageable step back. Because often what we expect of ourselves and what we expect of our kids is, okay, so now you're regulated, now you can get it done. Well, maybe not, but maybe they can take a step toward getting it done. And maybe that's more manageable. Maybe that's what they need to do, is take a step rather than complete the whole thing. So making sense so far? Any questions at this point? All right, so what I've prepared here for the rest are just a bunch of my tips geared toward managing this process. And then I'm hoping to allow some time for some specific questions. So I've got a whole bunch of surfing tips here. What you're going to see is that magnet turn attention. And what I'm trying to represent there is these shifts are just shifts of your attention. Shifting your attention from this thing to that thing. Okay, it doesn't necessarily involve changing. That's why I like the idea of shifting better. Because remember that slide with all the people in the oval? We have all these parts inside ourselves. And if you can shift from the one that's activated to one that can lead those parts into some more balance and harmony, okay, that's all that's involved. Not that it's easy, but that's all that's involved. It's not this big change like you have to create some new thing. You've got it inside you. A lot of times it's just shifting your attention to what you need. So this first one is wonder instead of worry. Okay. There were a lot of oh no's with the college process, right? Okay, I had my oldest, and he's given me permission to talk about this, almost didn't graduate. So in Wilton, we have this thing called PGP, where all the parents get this party together. And it's a big bonding thing for the parents. And all my friends were there, and I couldn't go because I didn't know if he was going to make it. And it was really, really, really stressful for me. But when I got myself to wonder, I wonder what it would be like to go anyway. I wonder what it would be like to tell my friends what's going on. And I did have some friends who knew what was going on. And I did get myself there anyway. And it was really helpful. But if I had just worried the whole time, I would have been even in a worse space. Okay, and my worry was not helping my kid at all. A lot of the work I do now is because of what I learned during that process of my worry getting so in the way of helping my child with what he was struggling with. It really wreaks havoc with the relationship. So I decided when I went back to practice that I was going to try to help people not find themselves in that position that I was in. So wonder instead of worry. So, oh no, we've got to make a decision. Wonder, there are so many choices. I wonder where Sam would like to start. I wonder if Sam is ready to start. I wonder what Sam wants. We can get so ahead of where they are that we forget that this is about them. Okay, be curious, not furious. Okay? Again, this is a really helpful little phrase to give yourself. So when you find yourself boiling over, okay, got to be curious, not furious. And that's when you need that time and space, because it's not a light switch, right? You can't just make it happen instantly, right? But, you know, the fury can come from something like this. I've organized all those notes. My husband made a spreadsheet. Sam hasn't even looked at it. Okay, they haven't even set eyes on that thing, and I've spent so much time, I just can't take it anymore. Now, who's this about? It's about your needs conflicting with their needs. Okay, so instead, be curious. Okay? I'm curious. I wonder whether Sam prefers to look at this information in a spreadsheet or in a book or online. I wonder what would work better for Sam. So helping your teen cope with what is, instead of what I call making sure and making nice. Okay, worry wants you to make sure, make sure, make sure, make sure, make sure. It wants to eliminate the uncertainty. It's impossible. You can't. It's there. Okay? Even a kid with perfect SATs, a GPA of 6, okay, even those kids don't have a certain spot anywhere. Right? There is no certainty in this process. Okay, there's, there's being good enough. There's, making the odds be better or worse, but there's no certainty. So that's the make sure. The make sure is trying to eliminate the uncertainty instead of coping with it. And the making nice is we can't have any of this uncomfortable stuff. You can't be upset about this process. You got to do it. Just stop being upset. Okay? Or not telling any of your friends that, your kid might not go, your kid's going to take a gap year. Okay? It's like everything's got to look nice. Everything's got to look like it's along the road. Okay? This really helps enable the worry to take over and to stay in charge. So, I don't know if it shows here, but this is somebody really stuck in the mud. Okay? Your kids get stuck in the mud a lot. We get stuck in the mud a lot. And instead of saying we got to get rid of the mud, get in there with them and say, oh, ugh, this is really unpleasant. Okay, let's see how we can work on getting you out of here. Let's see how you can get out of here. Okay, that's what they really need. They need to know that you can take it, that they're in the mud. Because if you're freaking out, like I was doing with my kid, I was unavailable for him and it made it worse. It made it seem like what he was going through was far more threatening than what it actually was, because I was thinking it was so not okay, because I was not okay. So being able to be in there with them so that they know, even though this is really hard and even though you're struggling with it, you're going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Okay, so help them discover a match instead of secure a prize. Okay, so much of the buzz around this process is, about getting that golden egg, getting into one of the best schools. Okay, what does that even mean? Okay, it's arbitrary in some levels. There is some truth that some of these schools will open that first door a little more easily than others, but beyond that, there's really not the huge advantage that they make it seem like there is. Okay? So helping to discover a match. Where does your child fit? What are they interested in? Where are their people? Okay? And part of this is when you go on tours to allow space for, I don't know, I just didn't feel good here. That's important, okay? And to really, really respect that, acknowledge it, and be curious about it. So what was it that felt icky about that school? I don't know. Everybody just seemed to be, not looking at one another and, just drilled down, and it felt depressing to me. And it's really important to listen to. And they might change their mind. It might have been a bad day. And if there are enough other things about it, especially that intrigue your child, to encourage them to go on another day or take another look. But what we usually do is say, oh, that doesn't matter. Okay, this is a really great school. And if you get in here, everything's going to be terrific. Okay, we tend to dismiss those things. Okay, so describe instead of evaluate. And this comes loosely from the work of Faber and Maslish in How to Talk So Kids Will Listen. My favorite parenting book of all time. It is geared toward little kids. I like the original version better than the teen version, but the teen version has teen examples. So if you don't have the bandwidth to change the examples yourself, get the teen version. But describing instead of evaluating or shaming or criticizing really helps to keep the lid on. Okay? So instead of, Sam is such a scatterbrain. Okay? Sam's having a hard time sorting through all the mail from the colleges. Hey, I don't know how it is now. Are you still getting mail, like regular mail? And it's a flood, right? Okay. And as a parent, especially early on, oh, that school's interested in my child, and you start getting all puffed up, right? And you put that on the top of the stack. Okay. Stop that. Okay. What I'll often say to kids is, how you feeling about that pile of mail? And some of them will say, it feels like a lead weight pulling me down. So, okay, well, that's not the only way to look. So if it feels like a lead weight and it's important to mom or dad, have them keep it in their room. Okay, and they can look through it and they can, look at the pictures. I'll often tell kids, look at the pictures. You're going to get a vibe. Is there anything about that picture that you're curious about? And even if they start, dissing the kids' clothes, say, okay, all right. But anything else there you're curious about? Are you curious about what other kids wear there? Are you curious why they chose that photo? And you can get a lot of conversation going around that. Emails, they're going to get a flood of emails too. They may not know how to manage that flood of emails, even though you've probably given them a lecture about how to manage emails. Okay, they may have the first part down. So we're working with a student recently who I said, how do you go through your emails? And this is what you do in coaching. You ask these powerful questions. So what's your process for going through emails? Well, I scan through, and if it doesn't look like junk, I open that one. Okay, and what's next? Well, then I put a note in my book that I should do something about that. Okay, and then what's next? So how do you get back to that book to follow through? This was the sticky point for this client. And what was happening is a lot of her parts were really upset, and that I won't go into, about the next step. So sometimes you have to take that time and space to figure out, okay, what is it about this step that's really hard? What is it about this step that's upsetting you? So when you describe, you can more easily get into getting curious about these various facets of the process. And then when you're talking about school, so often people will say, that's a good school. Or if you're talking to a teen and they tell you about a school that you've never heard of, many parents will have this moment of, oh, and start evaluating, criticizing, they must not be able to do the good stuff. Not necessarily. Okay, some schools are good for teachers. Some schools are better for engineers. Some schools are better for physical therapists. Okay, in the school, it's better for a physical therapist, might not be good for the person who wants to be an engineer, but that doesn't mean it's a bad school. It means that's not a good fit for that person. Okay, so this is my dog, Luna. She comes to the office with me. She's still a puppy. She's not even a year and a half yet. Okay, but how would you like to be greeted by her every day? Okay, assuming you like dogs. Right? No judgment. I could be gone 5 minutes or 3 hours. I get the same greeting. Hi, I'm so happy to see you. Okay. Fortunately, she's learning not to jump so much when she's so excited because she's a big girl. She's 75 pounds. Right? But this is what I call the dog greeting. I'm really happy to see you. But so often during this process, we've been thinking all day about the things they have to do, that when they walk through the door, we may give a cursory, how are you? But then we're like, did ya? And there they are, buried under all those questions. The dog greeting is really powerful. And again, it requires some space. It requires you to be regulated enough to have enough space so that, you're not coming at them with an activated part whose needs interferes with or conflicts with one of their needs. And you can just come to them with some compassion, some curiosity. Okay. And dogs are really good at that. All right, so this is the get rid of the we. Okay. You're not going. As much as you might like to, okay. As much as you might like to, I remember touring and thinking, oh, if I could go back now, what I would do, like, oh man, look at all this stuff, but you're not going. Okay? They're going. It's their process. It's about them. So start talking about Sam is looking at, or my teen is looking at, not we are looking at. Okay, you're going with them when they look at. Okay, you're not going. So this one is really important and can be really helpful. If you think about a ramp instead of a cliff. And often the kids feel like this cliff picture. When they talk to me, they tell me that's what they feel like. They feel like, you know, the teachers, their parents, the other kids, the whole school system is pushing them toward this huge moment that's going to make or break them. Okay, we're selling them a load of garbage, in my opinion. Okay, this moment does not make or break them. It's a step along the way. Okay, it's just the beginning of their adult life. Okay, yet they are getting messages all over the place that it is this, you know, defining moment that's so important. And the weight of that can paralyze them. It can really paralyze them. So thinking about it step by step, thinking about it as a ramp can be really helpful. Because what kids need is they need a ramp, they need tools, and they need a coach. And when they have that, they can do it. But if you're saying jump, you know, would you do that? I hope not. Another way to think of it, there are lots of analogies for this. I often use the analogy of Mount Everest. I have this strange fascination with Mount Everest. I have no illusion that I could ever climb it because there are many parts of it I just could not or would not care to experience. But I'm really fascinated by the act of getting there, that what it takes to get up there and what people go through to get up there. But they get there one step at a time. Okay, you can't climb, I think some people have done it, but you can't really climb Mount Everest in a day. Usually it takes a year of training. You spend a lot of time at base camp getting acclimated. Okay, so you have these little dips like this. The weather's got to be just right. Okay, sometimes you have to try 3 times before you get up there. So how do you get up there? You get up there one step at a time. It's not like an elevator. Okay, you don't push the button and then suddenly you're there. Okay, that's not how this works. And the college process is the same. But we've sold the kids this bill of goods that, okay, you get into the school, now you've pushed the button, you get there, and you're going to soar to the top like that. And then when they get there, that's not what happens, right? So really shifting your focus away from this idea of gotta have it now to the process. And being able to join your child where they are in that process is really, really helpful. And this is where the conflict of needs come in. They may not be where you really want them to be. Okay? But if you just say that's such a threat that the only way out of this is for you to be where I need you to be, now we've got problems for both of you because you're not available to help them where they are. And they're feeling the added pressure of you needing them to be somewhere they can't be right now. Okay, so this I learned from my middle child, who we were quite taken aback initially. We had him in private school for various reasons. And he came home one day and said, we are only talking about college on Sundays from 4 to 5. And we're like, oh, okay. And fortunately, my husband and I were at a place where we were able to create some space. So we just said, okay, we'll talk about it. We'll think about it. And so we did. And it was really terrific because the rest of the week we could just be with our son. Before that, it was all about college. Okay. And it was like putting these sticky notes all over him all the time. Okay. And he didn't want to be with us. He didn't want to talk to us. And looking back, I don't blame him. Okay. And P.S. he went to what many of you would consider is a really good school. And he's doing really, really well. And that was, we only talked once a week on Sundays about what he was doing for his college process. Now, you know, at the private school, they had a very supportive process to help him through, but nevertheless, he did fine. I didn't even know anything about the school that he wound up going to. And many people are shocked. I never read any of my kids' college essays. Never read them. Okay, and they all did fine. They're all employed, they're all launched. They all did fine. This child told me, it's a funny story, told me about his essay. All my boys have some iteration of ADHD. And this one seemed to have the particularly squirrel-like. He's a musician, so he's very creative. And so he told me what his essay was about. I still haven't read it, but he said it was a moment he remembered very distinctly of us sitting on the stairs in our house after he'd been practicing the piano. And I was telling him, and he said, I knew it was really important, but you were telling me that it's not like, it's not just raw talent, that you really have to work hard, you have to practice. And all I kept thinking about, this is my son speaking, was raw carrots. And then I started thinking about how crunchy they are. and I knew you were telling me something important, but the carrots were far more interesting. So it was, his essay was, he incorporated that, and it was about his love-hate relationship with the piano and practice. This is also a child who was playing the violin and had his first concerto, and he'd been practicing it and then announced we had a loft in our house. He came out one day and very dramatically threw the music over the balcony and said, I quit the violin. So, we went with that. I mean, he could have been good, but he knew that what it was going to take, he didn't want to do. But now he's working on Broadway and very successful. So I tell these stories so you can see that these struggles happen, but they're not the threats that they feel like at the time. Okay? That they can be moments where a child is picking their own path, and maybe that's better for them. And if you can find a way to breathe and support that, that can be really helpful. So focus on what they're doing now, okay, instead of what they haven't done yet. Okay, my youngest rode crew, and my husband really wanted him to row crew, and he got recruited in that whole thing. But it could have been very easy to just get focused on what he was going to do with crew later, instead of just being with him in those moments. And in crew, I don't know if any of you know the sport, there are a lot of agonies before you get a glory. And the glories are far and few between. It's one of the things I like about the sport is that you really have to work super hard. But there were moments when, especially my husband, who rode in college, wanted the IRAs, wanted all this other stuff. And that took him away from where my son was now. So being able to regulate yourself and be there in the muck with them. There's a thing called the crash bees in rowing. It's at BU or was anyway, it's in their basketball stadium, it's huge. And so they have all these ergs, the rowing machines set up. And it's a combination of kids in high school and also grown men who are doing Ironman kind of stuff. And they're all competing against one another, and they're all trying to get a good score. Greg was a good rower, but his erg scores were not where the recruiters needed them to be. And my husband was like, you got to talk to the coach. And he wasn't feeling well. And so we had this whole thing going on, and I walked into this stadium, and they also have a section with EMTs set up, and each erg has a vomit bucket next to it. So I walked in and I could just feel the tension. I said, I'll be right back. So I went into the bathroom and I cried in the stall. I just was like, oh man, I can't take this. But I didn't want him to see it. It was something I needed to take care of. I didn't even tell my husband about it till later. I just was like, I gotta acknowledge this, take care of it, and then come back out. And then I was able to really just be with my son and say, you know, if you can't do it, it's okay. Just do what you can do. But without that moment, that's the timeout, he would have sensed my not being okay, would have just added to his burden of going through this. And he rode D1 for all 4 years of college, so, even without that ERG score. So I think this is my last one. So really focus on this. There are books in the back, a few copies of Eli Leibowitz's book, which if you have an anxious kid, which I would be shocked if none of you have anxious kids, because it's an epidemic right now. We live in anxiety culture. But Eli has this great, Dr. Leibowitz has this great two-pronged supportive statement that I really love. It's nothing revolutionary in terms of the world of anxiety, but the way it's put together, I think, is really beautiful. And it starts with that acknowledgement. So there's one component. I see you're struggling. Acknowledge the struggle. But then you shift your attention, but I'm confident you can cope a little better than you think. Okay, so it's important to acknowledge, but you don't want to get stuck there. Okay, so all this sensitivity training, and we really need to acknowledge feelings. How many of you got mired down in, oh yeah, it's so terrible, and then you're both feeling really wretched by the end of it, right? It's because you get stuck in the activation of those feelings. You want to acknowledge them, let that part know, I heard what you're saying, but you know what? I'm confident we can cope with this. And I say we there because in the internal family system, often the parts like when you say we, you know, you and the part are going to be okay. And in this situation, it can be helpful to a kid to say, you know, we can cope with this. Okay, more powerful if you can do the I, okay? But in this instance, not as, I was going to use the word deadly, and I can't think of another word, but not as harmful to use the we in this circumstance. So if you use that supportive statement, I see you're struggling, but I'm confident you can cope with this, instead of, oh, if you don't get it together, you know, your future is bleak. And trust me, even if you don't think you're saying that, in this culture, the kids are getting that message. They're feeling the weight of that if they don't get it together, that everything is bleak. So if you're seeing them weighted down, often it's the weight of that they're really worried that if they don't check all these boxes, if they don't get the sweatshirt that everybody can say, oh, wow, look at that their life is kind of over. And it's such a shame because their life is just starting.